Gary, I asked you this on the telly last night, but I think it's a really important point. Where can England develop? They've got so many good attacking players. There's still that sense, isn't there? They've got so many good attacking players. Are they making use of all of them? Is there some tactical switch they can do to remain defensively solid, but get more of those attacking players on the pitch?
Look, I've thought this for many tournaments that England have struggled to maintain possession in the most difficult moments in the last part of games. So Italy last night dominated and we were getting pushed back onto the ropes. But I look at this tournament, I think, right, what did Gareth have? We've only got really two centre-backs that I think are of the quality that can play, and that's Maguire and Stones. And they, thankfully, apart from the first game or two, stayed fit during the tournament. But if we look at the centre of our midfield, Nigel, it's an area you played in. And I look at Verratti and Jorginho last night for Italy, or De Jong for Holland, or Busquets and Pedri for Spain. And these rhythm players who keep the possession, who keep the game moving, who connect everything, who glue the game together and sort of make sure that you're able to keep possession constantly. If you look at our midfield options last night, and we obviously have Declan Rice and Calvin Phillips, who I think are our best two midfield players at the moment. One of them is centre-back like in Rice, even though he was outstanding last night. And Calvin Phillips is good on the ball, but he's certainly not a Jorginho or a Verratti in terms of how they play, or the players I mentioned before. So I think that partly, I think Gareth, if he had a Jorginho and a Verratti, would have played the way in which Italy did last night. I think he would have, he's smart enough, Gareth, to use the tools that he's got and think, right, how do I build this house with these tools? And that's what he's done in this tournament. He's decided that the way in which we can get to a final and win this thing is through being slightly more pragmatic and using our attacking players to go and win the game in moments. And I can't disagree with him, because I thought that's the way in which he should do it. However, if we talk about how we move it forward, how do we now produce a couple of central midfield players in the next 2 or 3 years? Bellingham's obviously on the bench last night, and Gareth maybe thought it was too early for him to come on. But a couple of midfield players that can basically dominate a midfield in a huge final stroke semi-final. Because we got dominated by Modric in the semi-final in Russia, and we've been dominated by Verratti and Jorginho last night. I think that, to me, is the development. It's not so much just the coaching staff and the players that we've currently got. It's about maybe having that 1 or 2 extra players that would be able to go into that team. We're developing lots of good players at the moment. Let's hope they come through in this next couple of years.
Gary, do you think we're good enough at the moment as a team to lose one of our rats in midfield and put maybe a more technical player there? Do you think that leave us more exposed, like maybe the French were, maybe the Dutch were, going into these major tournaments?
It would. There's always a risk with it. And I think that's where Gareth has thought the way to win this tournament is by keeping clean sheets. I didn't think they were good enough defensively before this tournament to get anywhere near the final. I thought it was semi-final, maybe final. But the way in which they've kept clean sheets all the way through has been absolutely outstanding. And I think that there's going to come a point whereby if you produce those players, let's say Bellingham comes through a little bit more in the next 6 to 8 months, 12 months, and we develop someone else, they're forced to play. You're forced to play the players when they're that good. You are forced to play them because they become almost like automatic choices. So if we can produce another Gascoigne, Scholes, players of that ilk in this next 2 or 3 years that connects with the Fodens, Grealish, Sancho, Rashford, Sterling, Mount, Kane's going to be there for a couple of more years. We've got great fullbacks. I think we've got some of the best fullbacks in the world at the moment, not just Luke Shaw and Kyle Walker, but the ones behind them. We need maybe another centre-back or two. And I think we'll be okay.
I think what you said is very important as well. When you play in a certain system, right, in a 5-3-2, that means you always have an extra man in the back to do that, to have that, drive with the ball coming into the midfield. So if you look at yesterday's game, if you have a Declan Rice in that position, he drops off so deep to get the ball of the defenders was actually not needed, because he's needed on the midfield to put pressure on Jorginho and Verratti. And the only one who did that was Phillips. He always was a man against man on the midfield. So what you said, in certain systems and in certain games, you need a type of player like a Modric, like a Jorginho or a Verratti to play that game for you and put the pressure on their half with the ball as well. And I think that was spot on. England need a type of player like a Scholes in the past, that can play the game and can dominate on the midfield, because otherwise you were wasting talent in front as well of England, because you could see, the presence of a good midfielder was essential in this game for the likes of Sterling, for the likes of Mount, for the likes of Kane. you could see how far Kane was dropping off to receive the ball between the lines, and he did, and that's how the goal also came in the first goal, from him dropping off and then pass it to the side. I mean, you don't want your striker to drop so deep. You need a midfielder to do that for him.
And Nigel, sorry, go, Gary.
Just one on Paul Scholes, because I named Paul Scholes the best player that I ever played with, and the reason I say that is that one, at Manchester United, any time we had possession, he was the catalyst for that possession. So let's say, for instance, Paul Scholes is in the centre of your midfield. He was insistent to me. People think Paul Scholes was quiet. He would say to me, get wide and get high. He would say to his fullback, split. You know, these players demand the rest of the players get into positions for us to be able to start our attacking shape. You know, they don't allow you to say, let's push up the pitch, which is what I do. Let's pick up the pitch and let the keeper kick it. They demand different things. And that's what we haven't got. We haven't got a midfield player that's saying to our centre-backs, compose yourself, give me the ball, get on the ball, giving them confidence and authority to do that. We haven't got it.
I don't think confidence-wise we're there yet. I think after this tournament, these guys have so much confidence that they can go toe-to-toe with the top nations. But going into this tournament, I don't think the arrogance, the confidence like the French have is there at this current moment in time.
Yeah, but Nigel, is that what's stopping England making the next step? As Gary said, very good full-backs, pretty solid centre-backs, goalkeeper had a good tournament, and attacking riches, really, that a lot of countries would be quite envious of. Is this the bit that's stopping England, this midfielder that we're talking about, whoever he may be? Is this what's stopping England from taking the next step?
I think so. If you look overall to the qualities that England have, you know, also the qualities that they have on the bench, there's so many offensive qualities, offensive opportunities to play. So, you know, Gareth Southgate really thinks defensive minded. And that's how he sets his team up, and then you have to respect it because he reached the final for that. But if you want to be competing with the likes of France, competing with the likes of Italy, you know, on the biggest stages, you need one or two of these midfielders that can dominate the midfield. I think that's the next step for Gareth Southgate, to recruit these kind of players and give them confidence as well, and fit them in his system. If there's going to be a 5-3-2 or 4-4-3, it doesn't really matter. The only thing that he needs to do is just get these players in order to also provide the attacking-minded players going forward.
Nigel and Andros, we look at Grealish and Foden, who are two exceptional players that we've got that could play. If you think about the job that Pep did with, say, David Silva and De Bruyne, who essentially are not defensive. If you look at Verratti and Jorginho's defending last night, their out of possession work is incredible as well as their in possession work. They go and tackle, they harass, they close down. Do you think we could mould, if we played slightly different system, maybe the 5-3-2 or 4-3-3, we could have Calvin Phillips or Declan Rice sitting and have Grealish and Foden in front, but they would have to improve their defensive work and their understanding and discipline enormously. Is that a piece of work that Gareth might think about in 18 months rather than producing another midfield player, which might be something that doesn't happen in that period?
I think so. I think if you look back right now, right, Italy is the European champion. So the blueprint for this system is Italy. So if you play in this system, then you look at Italy, what are they doing the best? If you looked at Barella yesterday in the position that he was playing, he was defending as no one else did on that number 10 position. So that is what you said, spot on, because you need a number 10 that can defend back as well and help the midfielder out, because otherwise you always have a 3-against-2 situation on that midfield. And that is not what you want to have. So he needs to look for himself right now in this squad. Who do I fancy the most to play on that position that can track back and help my two sitting midfielders out and develop from there? Because otherwise they will be floating between the lines and always have less on that midfield. So it's so important for Gareth Southgate to recruit one of these players and also have the pair of balls as well to do it and to play in a certain way and play with a number 10, because otherwise you're not going to go forward. And I think England have too many qualities players on the bench as well to not take opportunity of them, because it would be a loss for England as a whole.
I don't think Gareth needs to rip up his whole philosophy and the way he needs to do things, because listen, we're talking about John Stones, his header. He's a whisker away from getting contact and winning us the tournament. Penalties, where 1 or 2 penalties away from winning. So I don't think it's a post-mortem where you pick the bones out of it. Who needs to go? Who needs to stay? How do we get to that next level? Because we're already at the highest level. It's just that the last detail, which obviously you can't teach. You can teach penalties, but it's in the mind. It's the pressure moments, and unfortunately on this occasion we lost. But I think going into the next tournament, I think it's more of the same.
Well, let me ask you this, Andros and Gary,
Yeah.
because I was looking yesterday at the game, and when they were 1-0 up,